Because I have never given this lecture in my center, never on reservations. I know that the students are very, very clever, diplomatic. They will never come out the truth if I speak the truth.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the lecture on philosophy and sociology of reservation. So, this sort of lecture that happens in public talks from political organizations and activists in JNU, but we are having this as an academic debate discussion right now. It's also because the shifting times where the rights of the marginalized community is at stake, and that's why we need not just discussions in public platforms, but also academically we need to engage into the question of reservation, because it's been a long year since reservation has been implemented, and the SC reservation and the OBC reservation since the 90s. In this context, this lecture will delve into the philosophy of reservation policy in India and look into the parliamentary and judiciary history of it. It would also sociologically analyze the recent State of Punjab versus Davendra Singh judgment ruled by the Honorable Supreme Court and the public discourse around it. You must have read about and listened to many public discourse around the very specific judgment we are going to speak about, and also we are going to speak about reservation in general. So we are going to decode the judgment and the discourses around reservation. So I don't think I need to introduce Professor Vivek Kumar.
Thank you.
So let's welcome him. Thank you.
So, good afternoon or good evening, friends. This is, as I was telling you that I have never delivered a lecture on reservation. Neither I have never discussed in my class also. If you have been my victim in my class, so you would have never heard a discussion on reservation. I deliberately avoid, because I always think that there's a difference between personal and professional. And because professionally I don't have a topic to speak on reservation, so why should I be bringing that topic in the classroom? Because I teach methodology, so I keep on actually talking only my epistemology, ontology, methodology. So, but I have a take actually, and I have my own vantage point, because I have been listening the debates. Many of the intellectuals, they have come and they have given their mind to our students, and whether it is wrong, whether it is right, or whether they had any academic basis to talk about that, have they read anything on that, you will never know, but they have the capacity and audacity to give you a lecture and you all clap. Therefore, I thought that it is good that we can go to the people with an informed debate. You know, an informed debate is that what has been the philosophy and the stakeholders, why did they demand reservations? What is the basis? I think we need a little bit of history, a little bit of philosophy, and also a little bit of theory. So in these three aspects actually I wanted to speak on this topic. I thought it's Saturday, there will be a cozy environment where actually few people will sit down and discuss. I never thought that this topic really needs bigger space for discussion. But thank you all of you for coming on a Saturday when you could have enjoyed better things within reservations. Now, we all actually aware, we are all aware that it is a very emotional issue. Reservation is an emotional topic. And as soon as we actually talk, the division takes place. You know, there are people who are for it. So I'm going to speak, when I speak for the people, it is actually playing the music for the choir. That is actually, they are already convinced. So we are trying to convince the already convinced. That is one group. And the other group is, of course, they can never be convinced. You know, you can bring the biggest of the theories, you can bring biggest of the you say empirical data, logic, that all fails. So you know, the subjectivity and the objectivity question doesn't hold good for this topic. And therefore, you know, my simple actually exercise is that we can have a informed debate. That's the only purpose with this. So when I begin the topic, we can simply begin with the history also. So if you want to take the history of reservation, in India, for the first time, if we get any reference of reservation, like thing, it is 1902. 1902 for the first time, and Galombit in her book, Revolt against a Cultural Revolt in Colonial India, writes that it was Maharaja of Kolhapur. Maharaja of Kolhapur, a small principality, 1902, tried to fill their services. And the simple proclamation was 50% other than Brahmins. 50% of the civil services will be filled other than the Brahmins. That was, no caste was actually underlined, but only was other than the Brahmins. And we can very well imagine the non-Brahmin movement was going on, and it was really a very, say, aggressive movement of that time. And therefore, I think Maharaja of Kolhapur might have taken that clue from that, non-Brahmins. And why non-Brahmins? Because the 100% of the civil services were filled with the Brahmins, and there was no representation. And therefore he said that, look, there should be, you know, some difference. The second, actually, reference comes from Mysore. Mysore, the king, Wadiyar king Mysore, formed a Miller committee, 1918. 1918, they formed a Miller committee to argue that there can be actually reservations other than the Brahmins. So 3 years they debated. 3 years they debated that what can be the modality for the reservations, and ultimately 1921 they implemented this reservation for non-Brahmins. Now the third actually issue comes with the Justice Party, 1921 also. They actually copied the formula of the Miller Committee of the Mysore state, and they tried to implement in their actually Madras presidency also. But the philosophy and the academics of the reservation begins from 1919, when Babasaheb Ambedkar gave a representation to South Borough Committee. And we all know South Borough Committee was a committee of the franchise, was there to give franchise, to whom the franchise was supposed to be given, 1990. So, you know, it is here that the academics, or you can say theoretical and philosophical foundation of reservations can be really very well ascertained. And you know, here the question of reservation was not so prominent, but rather the question was of representation. The question of representation was very prominent. And Babasaheb Ambedkar was very, very clear, and he quoted A.B. Hurt. A.B. Hurt, and he quoted A.B. Hurt saying, the most difficult and the most momentous question for the government is how to transmit the force of individual opinion into performance of public action. How the public opinion can be transformed into public action. So he started looking at the government, the structure of the government, and the government as a space. Now, according to Ambedkar, he argues that as the government is the most important field for the exercise of individual capacities, for actually, harnessing your capacities and capabilities, government is the important field. And it is in this interest of the people that no person as such should be denied the opportunity of actively participating in the process of the government. So I think, participation in the process of the government for harnessing one's capacity and capability was one of the beginning for the representation of the individuals. And he was not talking about specifically Dalits. He was basically pleading for Indians. South Borough Committee, he was pleading for Indians as a whole. That look, you have to, and he was pleading to whom? He was pleading to British, that you have to give the representation to the people. Why? Because the British was saying that, look, you Indians are not fit for democracy. And therefore, why you need actually representation? Or why you need franchise? And therefore, Ambedkar was very clear. So he quoted, the incidents of US, United States of America. And he argued that if British have given the democracy to United States of America, and these people are so divided. There are Poles, there are Swedes, there are Russians, and there are many other principalities or say citizens who are speaking different types of language. Not only language, they are divided on the basis of religion. They are divided on the race. They are also divided in the regional aspirations. And also they are having a very different development as far as science and technology is concerned. If that mass, which is so diverse, if that can be given representation, then why can't Indians be given representation? So he said that yes, the British are saying that Indians are not to be given representation because they are divided on the caste and creed. So Ambedkar argued that look, the division of the caste and creed is a very different type of division. Why? Because caste and creed division keeps the people in isolation, and there is no endosmosis. The term he uses, that there is no interaction. Individuals are not able to interact with each other. They are not able to communicate with each other because of this caste. And therefore, what is lacking is basically, he used that as the sociologists look, like-mindedness. Indians are right now lacking like-mindedness. And therefore, there is no endosmosis, and therefore they are not able to take decision collectively. And that's what you are saying, that is division. Now, he says that if you allow them to come together and you give them representation in the government, then they will learn to sit together, and there will be a different type of like-mindedness which will emerge. The one type of like-mindedness is between the castes, but when they'll start sitting together, they'll start communicating with each other, then they will also think for the good of the other. They will also think that yes, there are certain agenda which are common, and which are there are certain agenda which is personal. So we have to take decision which on the agendas which are common, and therefore there will be a new type of like-mindedness will emerge in India, and India will walk together. So that difference will be gone away, and therefore Indians should be given representation. That is one of the very important aspects which actually Ambedkar started asking for representation. Now in this actually he argued that a good government is a government which does not only give representation to the opinions. A good government is not only that which gives the representation to opinions. A good government is that which gives self-representation also. Self-representation is important as far as good government is concerned, because he said that people talk about government for the people. Government for the people is there, but is government of the people also? If government is not of the people, then it is not a good government. Why? Because only wearer of the shoe knows where it pinches. How can you take the judgment for the others? How can you, and how long will you be representing them, their aspirations, their capacities, their capabilities? You will keep on. Now in this context, Babasaheb argued that if there is only government of the people, if the government is only of the people, that will produce only rulers and the ruled. So the people who get the chance to make laws for the others, they will always remain rulers, and those who are actually receiving the rule, they will be ruled. Now this is not going to produce democracy. Democracy can only emerge if the ruled also get the opportunity, capacity, capability to make the law for the others. And therefore pattern can change the hand. So those who are make the rule, they will be afraid that tomorrow those who will come, they can also make the law. And therefore they can make a democratic law. Otherwise, you know, they say, okay, I am representing your aspiration. What is the need? There's no need for you to come in the government. So then actually democracy will not emerge. And therefore the second reason because of which Babasaheb argued that there should be self-representation of the people, that was they can also get the opportunity to make the laws for the others, and then only democracy will start emerging. So the second philosophical basis is the self-representation. Self-representation of the people in the government. The third is moral principle. Moral principle, and that's what actually Babasaheb Ambedkar talked about, morality, that representation or self-representation is a moral question. Organizers are not very good. At least they can keep one bottle for these people. अरे ले लेते उससे यार, मेरे रूम में रखा होगा बॉटल, इसका पानी क्यों खर्चा कर रहे हो? So friends, the third reason was moral reason. तुम बहुत लंबे हो, इधर ले जाओ, इस पर बैठ जाओ, उस पर ये बैग हटा दो, उस पर बैठ जाओ, तुम थोड़ा इधर उस पर बैठ जाए, ये लंबा है, सबका व्यू रोक रहा है, उधर बैठ जाओ, इस पर बैठ जाओ. Good. So friends, third was the moral reason, and this moral reason was actually emerging out of 1885 memorandum given to the British by Gopal Krishna Gokhale. Now, Gopal Krishna Gokhale in 1885 gave a memorandum to Public Service Commission that had come then in India. Public Service Commission came to India, and you know, Gopal Krishna Gokhale gave a memorandum to the British that Indians are not given the opportunity to represent themselves in British bureaucracy. British bureaucracy, they are the lower level, orderlies, but they are not given representation at the higher level, higher echelons of the services. And therefore, and Babasaheb has quoted, in volume 9, he has quoted verbatim of Gopal Krishna Gokhale's letter. So please do read. I am not speaking from my own, but rather I am actually telling you that what was the content of the memorandum. And he says that because we have not been given representation, and therefore the Indians are, there is dwarfing and stunting of Indian is taking place. Dwarfing and stunting of Indian is taking place. They are not able to harness their capacities and capabilities. And therefore, Indians are not able to achieve their total manhood. Now, he says that therefore Indians need representation. Now, Babasaheb draw a parallel that look, the British rule in India is only 150 years old. And you did not get the representation for 150 years. And you are saying that within 150 years you have lost your manhood, you are not able to actually achieve your capacity, capability. What about us? What about us? You have not given us representation, even you have not given us human rights for thousands of years. And therefore, there is a moral responsibility of the Indians to give representation to the Dalits also in the sciences, in the politics. Now, that way, so that actually the government actually is important for representation. That was a moral representation. The fourth actually representation in the government and services was very important. And Babasaheb Ambedkar quoted Karl Marx. And Karl Marx and Lenin, And when the reorganization of state was taking place in Russia after the August Revolution, Lenin was faced with a dilemma, whether to keep the bureaucracy the same or whether you have to change the bureaucracy. So Babasaheb argued that Lenin had to change the bureaucracy to suit his ends because he wanted a total change in the state or through state. So bureaucracy was also changed in Russia after the August Revolution, and actually the change started running very smoothly. But Ambedkar argued that in India, British want to bring a change. They are the rulers. But who is in the governance? In the governance are the status quoist forces. The Brahmins are actually in the bureaucracy. And therefore, whatever changes British want to bring, they are not ready to implement that. And he gave example especially of education system. Education system, the school which were open, how the actually schools were not given access to ex-untouchables. The other aspect was, Ambedkar said that, there is a police and there is a judiciary. If both are corrupt, then it is fine. If both are corrupt, then they are liable or they are open to be bought from both the sides. Dalits can also buy them and the upper caste can also buy them. But the problem is that the police and judiciary is not only corrupt, but they are casteist. So they are ready to be bought by the other side, but they are not ready to be bought by the Dalits. And that is why there is no or guilty or implementation of the law is not in the right order. And therefore, Dalits should also be given representation in the bureaucracy as well. So that was, I think, the fourth very important effective implementation of the law from both the sides was another reason that Ambedkar talked about for the reservation. The last but not the least, actually, Ambedkar was talking about that how the cabinets are actually formed. How the cabinets are formed. So he said that, you know, whenever the cabinet is being formed, the education of the members are taken into consideration. Whether the member is educated or not. But the problem with the Dalits is that when the choice of the candidate for contesting an election is concerned, then the least educated member is chosen and he is given the ticket. And you know that the most glaring example of Kajolorkar, who defeated Ambedkar. What was Kajolorkar? You know it very well, I don't have to tell, but if you don't know, please find it out. He was one of the least educated. Now, when the tickets are distributed, then the least educated person is selected. But when the cabinet is formed, then the most educated person is selected. And in that context, Dalits are also left behind in the cabinet. Now, Ambedkar was very categorical that it is the cabinet which decides. Which decides. Come. ये हम लोग दे देंगे. हाँ? So, so he argued that, you know, cabinet is the real fulcrum of the government which decides the program and policies. And if there is no representation from this side or the Dalits, then who will influence the program and policies? You very well know that out of sight is equal to out of mind. When there is no one, then who will actually fight for that? And therefore, actually, we also need representation in the cabinet. But he was not heard, you know, that how things happen. Okay? So, this actually thing is little bit for the philosophical notion of reservation. Now I come to the exact, actually, the law. When did it start and how did it start? You know, I was giving you the history. I stopped till 1921. But the real, I think, the history begins when Ambedkar reaches to Viceroy's Council. It is the Viceroy's Council in 1943. 1943 is the real date. People keep on telling that, look, it is the Congress government which implemented the reservation for the first time. That is not correct. 1943, when Ambedkar was the part of Viceroy's Council, he brought a letter, government letter. And at that time, the reservation was 8/1/3. 8/1/3. This was a percentage. 8/1/3. That was the percentage which was allotted to scheduled caste. Now this actually was further upgraded in 1946 In 1946, it was upgraded to 12.5%. This I am giving you actually from the debates. 12.5% in 1946. And you will be surprised to know, and I was also surprised to know, that 15% of reservation for scheduled caste in the center only came in 1970s. Now people keep on telling me, oh, how many generations you want, reservation. Now this is 15% according to the percentage of population of the Dalits. But you all know the percentage of the population of Dalit is 16.8%. And even here, actually that percentage has not been given. Now, therefore, friends, the the beginning actually can be said that 1943, 8.1 by 3 was the reservation when actually it started at the all India level. Now, I come to the Constitution. I think Constitution is the very important philosophical also as well as empirical, or you can say legislative aspect on the basis of which reservation has been given. We all know the preamble of the India. I can begin with the preamble of India. And in preamble of India, we have talked about equality. Equality, of course. Professor Woman always used to argue that this is an ontological reality. Preamble, if talks about equality, that is ontological in nature. And therefore, you see that we talked about equality before the law. Equality before the law. Article 14, 15. But, in a hierarchical society, what actually people can argue, in the hierarchical society, if you look at the hierarchical society, if you introduce equality, what will happen? Those who are ahead, they will go further ahead. And those who are here, they will be lagging behind. So what happened? The framer of the Constitution argued that equality in India will in turn create inequality. In an unequal social order, in an unequal society, if you introduce equality, then it will further increase inequality. And that is where our founding fathers talked about equality of opportunity. They did not leave only equality. They did not only leave equality as a slogan. They talked about equality and then equality of opportunity. But even there they realized that equality of opportunity is also, because the society is not only unequal, but society has discriminatory practices also. There is discrimination. Even if you make a law, whether it will be implemented. And therefore, friends, they introduced what I call as equality of condition. Now, equality of condition, if you look at, equality of condition is nothing but reservation. I call it as, taking leave from Professor Kumar, that how this is equality of condition. Inequality, equality has arrived. Now what is going to happen? You give Article 330, 332, 335. So we have to begin with reservations or equality of condition in politics. In politics. Article 330 and 332 gives reservation in politics. Article 330, in Parliament, seats are reserved, and in Article 332, in legislative assemblies, according to the percentage of population of the people. Now, if you take this, I think this Article 330 and 332 has never been challenged, has never been questioned also. Now this actually, there is again, I want to deal this confusion that people talk about that reservations were for 10 years and after 10 years they were supposed to go. You're right that this article 330 and 332 were for 10 years. That means political reservation was for 10 years. Article 330 and 332, if you read Constituent Assembly debates, there was a debate. Now, once the debate started, people accepted, fine actually, we will have 10. But later on, when the articles were placed, there was a discussion, no, 10 years is a very small time. And just see the morality of Ambedkar. Ambedkar said that you people, when I was asking you whether you want it more, you did not come. You did not give any representation. Now when it is getting passed, you are saying that we have to increase. No, I am not listening. I will stick by the 10 years. And he stuck by 10 years. You can read Constituent Assembly debate. And therefore, friends, when people say, and I am telling you, very learned personalities say, judges will say, even the Speaker of the Parliament will say that look, this reservation was only for 10 years. And when I ask that, please show me where it is written, nobody shows. So I think from now onwards, be informed, only political reservation was for 10 years. And this has been going on, and nobody, I am telling you, no Dalit movement, no movement has taken place to extend this reservation. Sometimes actually you want, I can discuss that why actually political reservation has never been a contention. It has never been in contention. And therefore there is a doubt on the efficacy of that reservation. But let it go, no problem. But I'm not actually bothering about that. Now come to the Article 335. Or you can say that out of this political reservation, I think 243T and 243D has also come. Reservation in the local bodies. Local bodies. Panchayati Raj also and Nagarwam Palikas also. You can look at that. After 71 amendment, it came. But we are actually again not concerned with that. Nobody talks about that. But the contention, the real contention is Article 335 of the Constitution. Now this article, if you read, the language is totally different. The language of this article, the word reservation has not been used in this article. The people keep on talking about what the language is. The language is the claims of scheduled caste and scheduled tribes will be taken into consideration. Claims of scheduled caste and scheduled tribe will be taken into consideration, keeping the efficiency of the administration. So that means they have taken the minimum qualification for the reservations as one of the main stakes. So that actually, and therefore the second very important aspect is that there is no time has been stipulated there. In Article 335, there is no time limit since till when it will go. 10 years, 12 years, nothing is written. And therefore, friends, my humble submission is that for reservation in bureaucracy, there was no time limit fixed. And therefore, this propaganda that reservation is only for 10 years is totally wrong. It is misplaced, a misnomer. There is no reservation time limit as far as Article 335 of the Constitution is concerned. Now come to the reservations in education. Now this actually only comes from a office order, secretariat or secretarial order. We have only Article 46 of the Indian Constitution, which argues that state shall take with special reference to the education of scheduled caste and scheduled tribe. Nothing is written there. And gradually the extension of reservation in education is started. Now I am saying that this is basically equality of condition. Reservation is nothing but equality of condition. But we should not stop there. We should go a further step, whether we have achieved equality of output in 75 years or 74 years in the implementation of the reservation or the Constitution, whether we have achieved any equality of output. The data is very staggering. And I have few data. I could have made this. Till 1974, the reservation, 1974 till 1974, there was actually in class 1 there was only 3.2% of the reservation which was filled. 3.2, class 1. Class 2 it was 4.6 and class 3 was actually 10%. 1997 and 1998, the class A or class 1 8% and class B actually it was 4.2% and class C 4.3%. The recent data which has come in, recent data which has come in Times of India very recently, they are talking about that 13% in class 1 is still, 15% was stipulated, is still 13% in class A, and class B it is 17%. But I have data in education, and this I collated long back. Actually, if you want, you can read my article. There are 2 articles I wrote in 2007. One is governance and development in the era of globalization. Governance and development in the era of globalization. And another article, I think you can get it online, JSTOR or APW, Understanding the Politics of Reservation. This is 2005. 2005. Now in that, I was trying to collate one data, 1999 and 2000, where I was looking the reservation in the 45 universities, central universities. In 1999 and 2000 and 2000-2001, BHU, out of 360 professors, there was only 1. This I am talking about 2000 and 2001. Out of 360 professors, there was only 1. And out of 396 associate professors, there was only 1. And out of 329, there was only 329 assistant professors, there was only 1. In AMU, because if I am bringing BHU, then people will say that you are bringing BHU, so I am bringing AMU also. Out of 233 professors, there was only 0. And out of 385 associate professors, 0. and out of 521 assistant professors, 0. Now that is not only very well actually. In JNU, which is considered to be very progressive university, out of, and this is 2001 when the professor reservation was not there, out of 183 professors, there were only 2 professors. And out of 100 associate professor, only 3. And out of 70 assistant professor, 11. I can go on, but what is interesting is IIT Madras data. And we are talking about equality of condition, whether we have reached to equality of output. That is very important, because some person came on that day and was telling that, look, we have really implemented reservation very, very meticulously, and the courts have really played a very progressive role in implementation of reservation. I was flabbergasted. What is he speaking? But never mind. You know, there were 422 teachers in IIT Madras. 422. And out of 422, there were only 2 teachers belonging to SC community. And that too, they came on their own. There was no reservation. This is the outcome of equality. You can take actually, you know, Jamia Millia Islamia, DU, 322 professors, only 3. And then 197, only 2 and 9. Now, this actually is the situation till 2000. And you all know that 2000 is the time when globalization was already a decade old. It was already actually in 1990 it started. Globalization started in 1990. And you can very well imagine at that time there were 10 lakh posts which were lying vacant and they were scuttled down. Nobody knows. So we are actually talking about the constitutional framework in which we have talked about equality. We have talked about equality in the letter and spirit. We have also talked about equality of opportunity. We have also talked about equality of condition. But what about equality of output? So reservation is only one aspect. But what about atrocities on Dalits? And this is again not my data. You take National Crime Record Bureau's data. 145 atrocities per day on the Dalits. 6 women are raped daily. And no Nirbhaya, no Abhaya. Never it has happened. Why? People who have said that actually that because of certain castes which have become mobile and therefore certain castes among the scheduled castes are lagging behind, they have never given the data that how much atrocities the mobile scheduled caste, how much atrocities, how much exclusion, suppression, disrespect these mobile scheduled castes suffer and how they have suffered. Nobody gives that data. So if you are comparing literacy rate with the development, I'm aghast. Which sociologist has actually correlated literacy data with development or social development? You know it actually. Literacy can be bought here and there with certificates. And you are talking about the data which is the census data. And you know census data, how it is actually collected. So my problem is that if we really today, and that brings me to the judgment, which I think many people wanted to hear, that what is my actually take from that. Now, if actually a 7-member bench, that is constitutional bench, is analyzing the status of the reservations, I think at least as a humble teacher, a proletariat teacher like me, will definitely like that you evaluate at least implementation of the reservation for 74 years. I will like to have a white paper on 74 years of implementation of reservation. At least 3 entries in that white paper. How many posts have been established because of reservation till 74 years? आपने कितनी पोस्ट सृजित की हैं? कितनी पोस्ट सृजित की हैं? Class A, Class B, Class B, Class D, whatever. How many posts you have established? And how many posts have you filled in 74 years? And third, how many posts have you lost out of privatization of the public enterprises? You take example of Air India. How many posts have been lost? And nobody is talking about that. They have come that, look, some people have taken actually fruits. That means you are trying to create a wedge. You are deliberately trying to tell that, look, some people are forward because at the cost of yours. Because of, actually they have taken away your resources, but you are not giving the details how the reservation has functioned for 75 years. Why? I think who is stopping? And that brings me the havoc the courts have played. And I don't have any hesitation whether I am booked or not, but I'm ready to at least have an academic analysis that how the courts have actually played a havoc with the reservation. Some people were saying that they have taken a very progressive role. And they said that American courts have played a havoc with the reservation. But they did not have the audacity to tell about the reality of the reservation. Reservation in India comes from Constitution of India. Reservations in India is actually enshrined in the Constitution. And even if the judges want to play havoc, they will not be able. But in American Constitution, there is no place for reservation. It is only a convention. Other things being the same, Afro-Americans will be given preference. And within Afro-Americans, it will be the women of the Afro-Americans will be given preference. So there is only a convention. It is not part and parcel of the Constitution. But even then, what happened, friends? How they have limited the scope of reservation. First of all, they have actually equated 50% of reservation with the basic structure of the Constitution. Where is it written? Where is it written that 50% will actually maintain the basic structure of the Constitution? It is their will. They have analyzed it. And that too in 9-member bench. That is 11-member bench also. I don't know why people did not go. The second aspect is, where does the collegium comes from? Collegium comes from a convention. It is not part of the Constitution. So how can we trust actually the black coat members only? We are not ready to trust our parliament, which has 542 people. Every 5 years they are being terminated. They have to actually settle down the test of lakhs of people. Then I am afraid that are we democracy? We are ready to trust the courts, but we are not ready to trust our parliament. You take the example, parliament did a mistake by giving 10% reservation. What did the courts do? Why they did not overturn if it was against the Constitution? You can imagine. There is 3:2 judgment. 3:2 judgment, that means actually it should go to 7-member bench. And if it is not decided, go to 9-member bench. If it is not decided, let us go to 11-member bench. But why? Why actually courts are not deciding? And they say that, look, they have not. So whose share 10% has taken away? It is not the reserve category. And you all, I think, must be knowing that when Mandal 2 came, the reservation for OBCs came for education. Education 27% was supposed to be given. But for OBC, reservation 27% in education was not given in one go. It was first 9%, then 9% and 9%, 3 years. But what was more actually astonishing, that along the commensurate number of 9% seats were increased for the general category, by saying that no, you should not be penalized if we are increasing. Now the worst part was the OBC reservation. OBC reservation came after 45 years of the implementation of the Constitution. Because Babasaheb had laid down in Article 340 that there will be a commission which will identify the castes which are backwards, other than the scheduled caste. But what happened? It took actually 45 years to identify their castes and actually give them reservation. Now within 45 years, after the Green Revolution, after the White Revolution, after the Backward Revolution, the backward classes tried to develop themselves economically. And that is a natural process. Even if you don't want, there will be change in the society. So the society was changing, and with the blood and sweat, the OBCs tried to actually develop or have the economic mobility. And what did they get? They get prasad of creamy layer. Now, what was the contribution actually, and what was the basis for creamy layer? Because it was educationally and socially backwardness which was supposed to be taken into care for giving reservation to OBCs. And therefore, I have written my tweet that at least OBCs should demand, academically, epistemically, ontologically, they should demand that the creamy layer should be removed from OBC also. Then and then only justice will be done. Because, why I am saying so, and this brings me to the concept that how creamy layer was intruded in the judgment of this. So, if you look what has happened, this judgment, I was reading, 565 pages judgment, the whole night. Now, how unevenly it is written. Justice Chandrachud write 140 pages. Justice Vikram Nath write only 2 pages. Bela M. Trivedi writes 86 pages. And Satish Chandra Sharma writes only 2 pages. Pankaj Mittal writes 54 pages. And Justice Gawai writes 281 pages. Within 281 pages, on 280th page, you can see it is online judgment, you can download. On 280th page, he has given points in conclusion. He has given 8 points. Out of 8 points, the 7th point says that creamy layer will be also introduced in the scheduled caste. Is it not the fulcrum of the outreach of the judgment? Why? It is the outreach. People are silent. Why? Because if you see the first page of the judgment, it says that the discussion or the case is for actually discussion. The discussion is basically to decide the status of the categorization from implementation of reservation. There is only one point agenda to be discussed. Now from where the creamy layer issue comes before the court? And we are saying that courts are very, very justiciable. And that's why I said that judgment has been given, justice has not been done. You can give the judgment. Then you look at, actually, they say that subcategorization among scheduled tribe and creamy layer among scheduled tribe. Now scheduled tribes were not even the party. Is this not against the natural justice? You are actually imparting a judgment without listening a party. At least a layman like me also understand. And therefore, friends, what I feel that we need to understand the whole aspect. Why I don't actually agree with the creamy layer in any sort. Why? Because I think you are all aware of a concept like cultural capital. Now, cultural capital is not accumulated in one generation. Cultural capital cannot crystallize in one generation or 2 or 3 generations. And people who are actually asking for reservation, who have taken reservation, those who are asking for reservation, they are competing with the people who have accumulation of cultural capital of thousands of years. This cultural capital is of thousands of years. You are competing with the cultural capital of accumulated for thousands of years, and you are telling that you can compete with them within 1 generation or 2 generations. I made a list of 50 teachers of this very university. This very university, SC/ST, and I found not even one teacher, only one teacher was having a pedigree of, teaching. His father was, of course, a teacher and a professor, or UGC chairman. But the rest of the 49 people had no way that actually their fathers were school teachers also. And people are saying that I have to compete with the, I was talking to our Vice-Chancellor, B.B. Bhattacharya. And B.B. Bhattacharya told me, Vivek, we are 9th generation Bhattacharyas. Bhattacharya is Bhattacharya. That means they were acharyas. They were teachers for 9th generation. Just like, this Durkheim. Durkheim had 8 generations as rabbi. And therefore he actually 9th generation wanted to be rabbi, but they were not. So generations of generations have been there. And the people who are actually trying to avail reservation, they have 1 or 2 generations cultural capital, and people want that you should compete with thousands of years of generation. Therefore, I think the concept of creamy layer within the reservation is not tenable again. I was trying to look at that how and where this concept has come, who has brought. Why? Because the question of representation is more important than the creamy layer. Now representation, if you really take, that's what actually whole contention is, that reservation is not the question of poverty alleviation program. ये गरीबी उन्मूलन कार्यक्रम नहीं है. इत्तेफाक से ये मुझसे ही क्वाइन हुआ. अब लोग इसको पेटेंट तो है नहीं मेरे पास, लोग चुरा करके बोलते हैं. They never actually give me reference that look, it is Vivek Kumar's. I've written this article also. It is not a poverty alleviation program, and it is also not question of certain seats. It is a process of nation building. How nation is basically arrived at. And Babasaheb Ambedkar argued that nation will only emerge when the erstwhile excluded classes are given self-representation. Self-representation in the institutions of governance, in the institution of production, in the institutions of education. If you don't give, then there will be only monopoly of certain groups. And that is not the way the nations arrive. Nations arrive when the representation of the population, at least in percentage of their population, is given in the institutions of governance, in the institutions of education, in the institutions of resources as well. But if you go and actually analyze again, where is this representation? You take Actually, judiciary, you take university, you take civil society, you take industry, where is that representation? But the people who had representation, they were given further 10% reservations. They had representation everywhere. In the university, in the bureaucracy, in the judiciary, in the industry, in the media, even now actually sport should be taken as an industry. They had the representation, but they were further given reservation to augment their number. But nobody is talking about creamy layer there. Because creamy layer has been reduced only to economic aspect. And what is happening now? Father and mother take 1 year leave without pay. 1 year leave without pay. Because you have to only give the certificate of the 1 year, last year. And what they do? They go on leave without pay for 1 year. And they get a certificate that there was no income. And their wards get the certificate. Many people have given their all properties to their relatives or their wards, even sons and daughters. And they say that look, I don't have any income. And you know that certificates how people get. You can get death certificate, birth certificate, income certificate, residence certificate. Now this actually is therefore I think this fight is of representation and nation building. My actually whole process is that unless and until you give representation to the people in different institutions, nation will not emerge. And therefore, this subcategorization business is again, actually, I am not against subcategorization. Not at all. Why? What I say? I say that, look, yes, there are certain castes which are lagging behind. Fantastic. You identify these are the number of castes which are lagging behind. Fine. And then go to the parliament. Go to the parliament and pass a ordinance that this many castes are lagging behind, and therefore parliament is reserving 5% seats for them. Nobody is objecting that, because what I feel, parliament is the supreme body of the people, we the people of India. And therefore I still feel, given the composition, I don't doubt about that, but it is still the supreme body. And if the representation comes from there, the state will not be allowed to play a havoc. You know what the state will do? They will only leave out the castes which are mobile, and rest actually they will keep. Now, in way, you are morally telling the mobile scheduled caste that you are corrupt. You have usurped the right of your lesser brothers. But you are not telling your follies that I have not implemented reservation for 70 years in letter and spirit. I have not created the seats which were supposed to be. And you know the scuttling down starts from 1960s. Read Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru's letter to his chief minister, 1961 letter. It is available in Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru's letters to his chief ministers. 1961 he writes, though we are tied up with the convention, but I do not like any type of reservation. Now if in 1961 a person of the stature of Jawaharlal Nehru writes this letter to his chief minister, who has the guts to implement, I do not like any type of reservation, and you are implementing, how dare? Till 1970s, therefore friends, what happened? Till 1970s, there was a dictum, and everyone who has suffered, they will know. They used to say, candidates not available. There was a dictum which used to tell candidates not available. And then seats were lying down vacant. And therefore, government was honest enough to bring a special drive for filling the backlog vacancies for the scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. At that time there was no reservation for OBC. Now what used to happen, what was the design? They used to advertise for 2 times, and there was a logic that after 2 times you can convert it to general caste. So they will advertise 2 times and say candidates not available, and then turn it to the general caste and fill it with that. Now by 80s, 85, 80s actually, Dalits have, the scheduled caste have developed little bit of capacity and capability. Now what happened? The dictum changed. Instead of candidates not available, candidates not found suitable. And it still goes on. It still goes, candidates not found suitable. Now suitability I can decide. If I am sitting this side of the chair and you are sitting that side, I can also decide how you have to decide the suitability. Therefore there was no objective way to assess, and there was rejections. Now by 90s, privatization, globalization and liberalization came, and then the scuttling of the number of seats started. So my humble plea is that, have you really implemented the reservations by letter and spirit of the constitution, that you are saying that some people have become mobile? And how many jobs are there? Again, Indian Labour Commission report 1998 or 97, I think I had seen that there were 198 crores of jobs in India. Class A, Class B, Class C, Class D, State and Public Service Commission and public services all. 1 crore and 95 lakhs. So I can take it actually roughly 2 crores of jobs, roughly, for our calculation. Now out of these 2 crores, the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe should have got, if all the seats were filled, 45 lakh jobs, 15% and 7.5%. The scheduled caste and scheduled tribe would have got only 45 lakhs of jobs. But they got only 35 lakh jobs till 1990 when the privatization started. It is data. Now, what is the population of the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe? It was 25 crores. Now, please imagine how these, actually, I'm leaving 45 or 50 lakh people, but how the 24 crore and 50 lakh people, how do they survive? Do they survive only on reservation? I think, therefore, the propaganda around reservation has been of a very high quality and quantity, because this side was not speaking. And now when they are speaking, I think still they are not ready. And therefore people like Ravish will call only Yogendra Yadav, because they gel together. They gel together. And of all, somebody came here and instead of putting the governments which have taken vote of the Valmikis in toto, they have not put onus on them that when they have sent people to Rajya Sabha, whom they sent? Did they send to any Valmiki? I am saying that please actually send them Rajya Sabha. The mobile scheduled castes are not going to raise any question. Send them to Rajya Sabha, send them, make them vice-chancellors, make them professors, make them actually assistant professors, make them judges. Who is stopping you? And where there is no reservation, what will happen to them? 80 colleges in Delhi, 80 colleges, not even one principal from scheduled caste or scheduled tribe or even minorities. This is the representation. 80 colleges have governing body members. Governing body members. You go and see who are the governing body members. 45 central universities. Only one ST is the Vice-Chancellor. Abhi ek aadh ho gaya Uttar Pradesh. So where is that representation where there is no reservation? No representation. Therefore, I think there are many questions which can be asked, but my problem is that whether reservation has been successful in giving representation to the people of the deprived communities. If they have not, then I think there should be a study, a white paper, that why. I think I'll stop.